Mr. Askary belongs to the worldwide network of road and bed initiatives, and I want him to, in his paper, he will speak about China railway development, debt trap, and all those fears people are entertaining. Mr. Askary.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. Rotimi Amechi, Minister of Transportation of Nigeria, Mr. Chairman Olawale Rashid, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be invited to speak in this webinar on railway development in Nigeria. My name is Hussein Askary, and I'm a board member of the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden. I have also worked many years as an economic and strategic analyst in the International Schiller Institute with special focus on the impact of regional and transcontinental infrastructure integration on economic development. Focused for many years on the question of the new Silk Road, which later evolved into the Belt and Road Initiative. I'm the co-author of this book called Extending the New Silk Road to West Asia and Africa, and how to integrate these two regions into the Belt and Road Initiative. Therefore, my focus today is on the continent of Africa as a whole, not simply only on Nigeria. As for Nigeria, I can only say that I have watched this with gratitude, what has been presented and will be presented, because I also need to learn more about Nigeria. The Belt and Road Initiative, which was announced by Chinese President Xi Jinping in 2013, is becoming the largest economic endeavor in history. It's already shaping many aspects of the world economy so far, and 136 nations have joined the initiative, including 46 African nations. Now, why is this important for Africa? It's a well-known fact that the railway system built by the colonial powers in Africa had one and only one purpose, that is to extract wealth from Africa to the world markets. Not only are the different nations not connected together, but the railways are of different gauge systems. So here we can see the difference between the colonial system and what we envision for the future of Africa's rail. This condition, or the colonial condition, and the lack of efficient intra-African transport networks created a situation after independence up to this day where the different African nations trade with the outside world is far greater than among neighboring African nations themselves. So Africa's trade with African nations is only 13% of its total trade. For example, when I looked at it in 2014, Sudan's trade with Egypt, which is a neighboring country, was only 1.5% of the two countries' trade with the rest of the world. So this is not a very good situation. A World Bank study conducted in 2006 projected that if the roads networks among African nations were to be upgraded, that's the existing roads, only if you upgrade these, you will have a growth of trade in these nations for between 250% and 1,000%, especially in the sub-Saharan landlocked nations. The new Africa Free Trade Agreement is, of course, a huge step forward, but you cannot have trade without trade routes. So if we look at the next slide, this is a map issued by the World Food Programme, showing the level of hunger in the world. Now, that's the number of people under who don't get enough food to eat. So the dark numbers are 40% and above. You have the gray countries like South Sudan and the Congo here. They are not represented, but because there are no statistics, but they are in the deep purple color. So what you see here is that the most affected countries, what is common among them is that they are all landlocked. They have no access to international trade ports, and they are also not connected efficiently to their neighbors. So So only if you upgrade, as we said, the existing roads and build them better, you will increase the trade. Now, what happens if we have much greater railway integration? So why is, if we move to the positive side of things, is that, this is from the 2018 Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the FOCAC. And almost all African leaders were in Beijing. 2 weeks later, less than half of the African leaders went to the United Nations General Assembly, which shows their interest. Now, why is China interesting for Africa? Now, in President Xi Jinping's visit to South Africa and the FOCAC summit in 2015, he said a number of very interesting things, including the fact that China, as a developing and poor nation, managed in 3 decades to leapfrog the industrial nations who took like 200 years of development. And he said this is completely possible to do in Africa. However, he outlined identified three bottlenecks of development, which is very important to think about. And the first one is the shortage of capital, and that's for Africa. But China is speaking from its own experience. The shortage of skilled labor and the lack of infrastructure. Concerning the first one, on the shortage of capital, China is contributing large sums of both loans, but also foreign direct investment into African infrastructure and industries. So it was $60 billion between 2015 and 2018, and in the next period is $60 billion in credits. Now, concerning the shortage of skilled labor, China is intending and have been working, like in the railway projects in Kenya, to educate the Kenyan or the local workforce to participate in these projects. These are the ladies who are running the Mombasa-Nairobi Railway. They had courses in China and in Kenya to do these things. So the third bottleneck is the lack of infrastructure. The lack of infrastructure, which is, without infrastructure you cannot get anywhere. Now, this is the plan for the African Union's the Trans-African Highway road, network, to connect all the African networks. But it's more efficient to connect the African continent with railways, because long-haul truck transport is not as efficient as trains. But this is one of the bottlenecks of Africa's development. So in 2014, the Prime Minister of China was in East Africa and also in West Africa, in Nigeria, and he pledged that China is willing to connect all the African nations with modern railways. And immediately work started, and we had the first, one of the first and very quick project was the Djibouti-Addis Ababa Railway, which is key to Ethiopia's own national development plans. This is not simply a Chinese plan, it is part of Ethiopia's national development plan, which includes industrialization and building of industrial zones. The second one was the Mombasa-Nairobi Railway, which was also accomplished in record time, but also it's part of the East African master plan of transport, which will connect all the East African nations, but also with the of the Great Lake nations, which are landlocked. We had also the Angola, Zambia, Tanzania Railway, which upgrade and connection, which also was done in record time. You already in Nigeria have massive projects for railway, both in cooperation with China, but also with other countries. Other things we can do in Africa is to connect Africa's rivers and lakes to use them for transport, which is quite possible by building canals and connecting the rivers and the lakes through artificial canals, as the Europeans did with the Rhine-Main connection and the Donau, the Danube River. One of the projects is central project is the Transaqua, which is intended to bring water to replenish Lake Chad. through building a canal from the Congo, bringing water, but that canal can also be used for as a transport, for river transport in that part of the Great Lakes region. So 2 years ago, my colleagues were in Nigeria, in Abuja, where the Lake Chad Commission actually accepted this proposal as a policy, and a Chinese and Italian company signed a memorandum of understanding to work on the feasibility study of this project. Now, what I come to the final part of is what I call the Sputnik Effect. When the Russians sent their first spaceship into space, and the satellite, the Sputnik, that motivated the United States to accelerate its space program as in a competitive fashion. Now, that kind of competition is quite positive, and therefore, because China cannot do all the work needed in Africa, we need to motivate nations in Europe and the United States to participate in the infrastructure projects in Africa. I take this example from Egypt because last September, the Egyptian Transport Ministry announced that a Chinese-Egyptian consortium won the bid to build a high-speed railway in Egypt. But then, just in January, we heard that the German Siemens had come forward because their previous bids were rejected because the Chinese were cheaper and more efficient and quick. The Siemens renegotiated its bid and offered a cheaper, faster contract, including employing Egyptian local companies in the project. So now the Siemens will do the project instead of the Chinese. But that kind of competition is helpful for the nations of Africa. So we are not advocating only that China should be involved. We advocate that all nations should be involved in the Belt and Road and in the development in Africa. Now, in conclusion, what I think is important, and Mr. Jide Ihizil mentioned, is what do we intend with the railways? Because the railways are not simply taking a container or a shipment from point A to point B, from Ibadan to Lagos. The real purpose of this kind of infrastructure is to create what the late American economist Lyndon LaRouche and my own teacher calls or developed as the development corridor, where you have railways as the backbone for the development corridor which extends 100 kilometers on each side, but it also includes water canals, water transfer, power transfer, oil and gas pipelines, but also building industrial and agricultural projects around these infrastructure. So the local natural resources, human resources in these areas between A and B can be developed and augmented, and value is added to whatever moves from point A to point B. So that should be the purpose of the development of the railways in Africa. So these will be like the blood vessels in the body. They carry nutrition to all the different parts and organs of the body, so everybody is activated. So in conclusion, I think that Africa has a bright future ahead. It could become the workshop of the world and the breadbasket of the world too. The 1.3 billion people who are projected to reach 3 billion people of mostly young Africans in 2050 hold the key to the future. The only thing they need is the tools of progress, and emphatically the infrastructure, both this hard infrastructure, but also the soft infrastructure, which is education and healthcare.
Thank you very much.
Therefore, I don't think, I just have 1 minute left. I'm optimistic that Africa is leading towards a bright future, and the railways will be a way towards integrating Africa's peoples and their dreams. I don't think this is an exaggeration. It's not far-fetched. It's quite possible and practical. I have some ideas, of course, about how Africa and Nigeria can finance its own infrastructure development autonomously, but we can leave that for the discussion period or to another occasion. So thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Askary. Thank you very much for that detailed overview You have given us a bigger picture, a worldview, and how it affects Nigeria in terms of Chinese involvement.